coming to chapter 5 now, and this study is called He Came to His Own. Now in the yellow book, there are a few studies kind of that back to back, He Came to His Own 1. The next study is called study number 7 in the book, He Came to His Own part 2. And study number 8, He Came to His Own part 3. So one of the themes that you see in chapters 5 and 6 of John is He came to His own. Now, this is actually a theme in chapters 5 through the end of 10. So for the next 6 chapters, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, yes, 6 chapters, it's going to be a lot of Him coming to His own. Even if you look up at chapter 5, verse 1, or look down there, after this there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Again, remember the location. When the Bible gives you a change of location, there's something about that. So we're now in Jerusalem. We're not in just Judea in general, of which Jerusalem was a part of, and we're not in Samaria, and we're not even in Galilee. Now we're going to Jerusalem. And so when you think of Jerusalem in the Gospels, think of teeth of the opposition. I mean, this is North Carolina playing at Duke, Cameron Indoor Arena. This is hostility. Now, biblically speaking, this should be the place where He's most accepted. You sit on the throne. Here you rule and reign, not just us from Jerusalem, but the nations from Jerusalem. Now, Jesus will one day come and do that, but He, in His first coming, was not welcomed in Jerusalem. So we're seeing here in chapter 5, we come to a whole different section of the Gospel of John. We got the prologue in 1 to 18, and then Jesus started amassing followers. Jesus started doing some signs, chapter 2. Jesus talked about entrance into the kingdom, chapter 3. Chapter 4 gave us indication that He's the Savior of the world. So you could say that John 1 through 4, there were a lot of preliminary things kind of setting the stage for us. Now remember John 1, verse 11. I'll read it for you. In the prologue, we were introduced to this reality. He came to His own, and His own people did not receive Him. You could use that as a title for chapters 5 through the end of 10. He came to His own, and they did not receive Him. Now, some did. Again, we'll see that in 5 to 10. But largely speaking, John 5 to 10, as He came to His own, His people did not receive Him. Chapters 11 and 12 are kind of some transitional chapters, or at least the second part of 11. But 11 and 12 are transitional chapters where He starts to move from the Jews to the Gentiles. It actually says in chapter 11 that He was done teaching the Jews by and large. And then there's that famous passage in chapter 12 where some Greeks come and seek Jesus. And you think, oh, well, why is that there? Because John's showing us that He's done, in a sense, going to His own people. So now some Jews or some Greeks are introduced to Jesus. And then in chapter 13, He'll narrow in on His followers, His disciples, that intimate crowd. So there are movements in terms of who the audience is and what their response is to John. And in John chapter 5 through 10, of which we're just starting now, this is a section that could be themed, titled, He Came to His Own, and His own did not receive Him. Okay, so that's where we're at. Excuse me. I'm going here to the context. Page 69 of the yellow book. Again, I think this is helpful just to kind of set the stage for you. So I'm going to read again these 2 paragraphs. Chapter 5 opens a new section that runs right through 10:42. In chapters 2 to 4, Jesus is presented as having come from heaven to earth. He announces the arrival of His Messianic kingdom and teaches about membership of it. In chapters 5 to 10, the issues dealt with all relate to Jesus' claim to be the Messiah and equal with God. His claims are challenged by the Jews who already consider themselves to be God's covenant people. The question is, what will happen in this extraordinary conflict between God's Son and God's historic people who want to kill Him? In chapter 5, the presenting issue is the Sabbath. by setting out and expounding his claim to equality with God with the right to give life and to judge. Jesus shows the Jews what is at stake if they reject him. We are left wondering why they reject him and what will happen to them. Okay, so that's kind of the setting here for chapter 5. Now let's look at some Old Testament background. Again, page number 70 of the yellow book. Here's an Old Testament reality to understand before we jump into chapter 5. The lame shall leap. Isaiah 35 looks forward to a day when God will rescue his people, at which time the lame will leap like a deer. That's from Isaiah 35. In selecting the paralytic from a group of lame, blind, and paralyzed people, Jesus clearly shows that the time of God's rescue has come. The Sabbath is also a good picture to have in your mind from the Old Testament as we come into chapter 5. The day of rest when God's people were meant to remember God's rescue of them in the past from the slavery of Egypt. However, for the Jews of Jesus' day, the Sabbath had become an end in itself. The keeping of the Sabbath rules and regulations was more important than the God whom they should have been honoring on the Sabbath day. They should have recognized in Jesus' healing of the paralytic the clear sign that the future rest of the Messianic age was at hand. Instead, they quibbled about the keeping of rules. And finally, an Old Testament reality to think about as we come to chapter 5, the Son of Man. From Daniel 7, we've already seen that the term Son of Man speaks of Jesus' role as king after the final judgment. John has already added to that he is the gateway to heaven. Now further meaning is loaded into the title as we see the Son of Man as a life giver and a judge. Okay, let's go to the text, John chapter 5. He came to his own. Title for this message, this lesson. And point number 1, we see proof of equality with God, the healing by the pool. Now, before I dive in, you're going to start seeing in John chapter 5 a lot of father-son language. Again, we've already had a little bit of that in 2 to 4. 1 through 4, I should say, chapters 1 through 4. But you're going to start seeing a lot more talk of father and son. Why? Because Jesus is showing, again, in a hostile environment, that he is one with God. That's clearly being put before the Jews. And so, whereas you started to hear messianic language in, like chapter 4, the woman talking about Jesus being the Messiah, now we're introduced into Son of God, Father language, even all the more. Again, that was in the previous chapters, but all the more it comes out in this section. After this, there was a feast of the Jews, verse 1, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Again, enemy territory. Shouldn't be, but it is. Verse 2. Now there is in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there we go, by the sheep gate, a pool, in Aramaic called Bethesda, which has 5 roofed colonnades. In these lay a multitude of invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who'd been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew that he'd already been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be healed?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me in the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am going, another steps down before me." Jesus said to him, "Get up, take up your bed, and walk." We're going to highlight that. Again, Old Testament connections. Isaiah 35, God healing the lame. Here's Jesus, who's claiming to be the Messiah, claiming to be the one we've been waiting for, healing the lame. Verse 9, and at once the man was healed and took up his bed and walked. And at this point, you're going to have all kinds of people asking about the healing properties of water. You're going to have people say, are the 5 colonnades related to the 5 smooth stones? David, I don't know. What I do know and what we're going to major on is that Jesus is the Messiah who heals the lame. And the Bible has told us in the past that in the Messianic age that would happen, and now that's happening. So there are things to talk about, speculate about. Give them D.A. Carson's commentary on John. They can have fun doing all of that. But at some point we got to major on the fact that Jesus came and healed a lame man who had been lame for 38 years. This wasn't a guy that just kind of had sore legs for a few months. I mean, this is a miracle. The Messianic age is here. This is what's happening. And this happened in Jerusalem. And Jesus chose to go there and do this on the Sabbath. Jesus, the holy antagonizer. I love it. So good. Okay? Next part, verse 9. Now that day was the Sabbath. Again, an indication about setting here. That day was the Sabbath. So the Jews said to the man who'd been healed, "It is the Sabbath, and it's not lawful for you to take up your bed." Oh, we already dislike these guys. All right? But he answered them, the man who was healed. "The man who healed me, that man said to me, 'Take up your bed and walk.' They asked him, 'Who is the man who said to you, 'Take up your bed and walk'?" Now the man who had been healed did not know who it was, for Jesus had withdrawn, and there was a crowd in the place. You see Jesus, especially in Jerusalem, often withdrawing, ducking out certain times, not part of certain conversations, intentionally. Verse 14, after Jesus found him in the temple and said to him, "See, you are well, sin no more." So later on, we get a change of setting here. Now the man's in the temple, and Jesus interacts with him. "See, you're well, go and sin no more." This brings your mind, I mean, this is the second time tonight we've talked about sin. When was the first time? With the woman, right? Okay, so one thing John's showing us is, yes, the Messiah's here. Yes, he's going to the Gentiles, Gentile women. Yes, he's going to invalids, people who are paralyzed. And this isn't just, I'm gracious to you, don't worry about anything else in your life, I'll heal you, I'll give you water. Sin is an issue. And so he brings it up with the lady. He brings it up again with the man. It wasn't just that the man needed physical healing. This man's ultimate problem is sin. So the guy's at the temple, and he meets the God of the temple in human flesh. And the God of the temple, Jesus himself, says, "See, you're well, sin no more, that nothing worse may happen to you." I think the worst he's talking about is eternal perdition, judgment. So the man's ultimate need wasn't to walk again. The man's ultimate need was salvation. And I think that's what John's bringing out here. Okay? Sin no more, so that nothing worse may happen to you. The man went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who healed him. So again, part of being a Christian for some time is you read the gospel accounts and you kind of always think, well, yeah, the Jews hated Jesus, and especially in Jerusalem. And well, this is John introducing us to that idea right here. Okay? They don't know who was the guy that did this to you. Now, a couple years later, as Jesus is about to suffer and die, when stuff like this happened, they knew Jesus has been here. Jesus has been doing something. But here, this is the Jews kind of being introduced, the Jews of Jerusalem at least, being introduced to Jesus. So he heals this man. Who was it? Who did this? Who told you you can just get up and walk? The audacity of a person saying that to this guy. So the Jews are kind of being introduced to Jesus doing this work of salvation, even on the Sabbath. So the man, verse 15, went away and told the Jews that it was Jesus who had healed him. And this is why the Jews were persecuting Jesus. Okay, so negative response here. Because he was doing these things on the Sabbath. Reason one. But Jesus answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." So they first take offense at the idea that he's doing these things on the Sabbath. So there are two offenses that they take. I'm going to put one right here, that he was doing these things on the Sabbath. The second one comes in the next verse, verse 18. This is why the Jews were seeking all the more to kill him. What's worse than him doing these things on the Sabbath? That's pretty bad. The second reason is because he was not only breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. There's the second reason. Second reason is more of a problem to them than the first, even though the first is a big problem. So why did they initially hate Jesus? Because he was telling people to work, or he himself was working also on the Sabbath, and he was making himself equal with God. Those are the reasons they started hating him. This is John introducing us to the animosity of the Jews toward Jesus, and we're told why right away. Now, some things about the Sabbath and Jesus working that might help you better understand this, okay? The Sabbath forbade work on Sabbath. I'm trying to think of how to say this. Forbade normal 6-day work on the seventh day. However you want to say that. Okay? So you do this type of work, you work hard for your income, your family, for your food. You do this work on 6 days, but on the seventh day, you don't. Okay? And that was meant to give them an understanding that God was their provider, meant to give them relief from their labor. They had to actually trust God on that day. Obviously, it was a picture of God working and creating and then resting. And even that idea of rest, it wasn't if God went and took a nap, right? It just meant that he stopped the creating of the world on that day. The Jews, so the original Sabbath was meant to be a blessing to God's people. I want you to make sure you know that. The Sabbath was meant to be a blessing. The Jews turned it into a burden. They took something that was meant to be a blessing and turned it into a burden. I think that's one of the reasons Jesus does so much healing on the Sabbath. He is the Lord of the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for man, made to be a blessing to man. Man wasn't made for the Sabbath. Man wasn't made to be ruled by the Sabbath. Jesus taught that himself. Okay? Now, Jewish rabbis taught that there was one being who worked on the Sabbath, God. Their own system would have taught that God is the one who sustains the world on the Sabbath. We all rest, he's still sustaining the world. So the Jewish rabbis taught that God was always at work, okay? Rabbis taught that God was always at work. So notice verse 17. Jesus answered them, "My Father is working until now, and I am working." Jesus is doing work on the Sabbath, if you will, because the Father's always sustained creation on the Sabbath, always been active on the Sabbath, and now Jesus is active on the Sabbath. Jesus is, again, elsewhere, the Lord of the Sabbath. Not underneath the Sabbath, he is above the Sabbath. He is the one who created the Sabbath. So obviously, we see that this makes sense to them who turned the Sabbath from a blessing to a burden. Jesus is not obeying their traditions, which they set up, man-made traditions. He's not doing that. And, verse 18, wasn't just that alone they had a problem with, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. And this is one of the places I go when, you get our unbelieving neighbors who come to your door and argue about who Jesus was and who he wasn't. And his opponents did believe that he was making himself equal with God. That's exactly why they were trying to kill him all the more. Jesus' opponents did believe that he was making claims to deity by calling himself the Son of God. And that clearly comes out in verse 18. So, we're in the teeth of the opposition. He came to his own. He proves equality with God. He heals the lame. gives life and health and even rest, if you will, from this guy's burden, gives the guy rest on the Sabbath as this guy's burdened. And what we're meant to see is the response to this. Okay? The response is not a good one. They're persecuting Jesus. They're trying all the more to kill him. We didn't highlight that. Okay, so they're persecuting him in 16. They're seeking all the more to kill him in verse 18. Not a great start. Not a great start as we're introduced into the idea of Jesus being in Jerusalem before the Jewish leaders. Okay, let's go to point number 2. 19 to 30. He came to his own. Now there's a claim and explanation. Jesus is the Son, equal with God, who gives life and judges. God is the life giver. Jesus is the life giver. God is the judge. They knew that from the Old Testament. Now here, Jesus is said to be the judge. Okay, so this is a claim to oneness with God and an explanation as to how. He's a life giver and he's a judge. Just like God is a life giver and a judge, Jesus is a life giver and a judge. So Jesus said to them, verse 19, "Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing." Okay, so Jesus right away is making a claim to oneness with God. There's this claim. The Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing. For whatever the Father does, that the Son does likewise. Big statement there. For the Father loves the Son and shows him all that he himself is doing. And greater works than these will he show him, so that you may marvel. For the Father, what are those greater works? Here's one. Father raises the dead and gives them life. So also the Son gives life to whom he will. For the Father judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son. Another greater work, judgment of God. Given all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son, just as they honor the Father. So these two greater works, the Father is one who gives life. The Son also is going to give life. Now, we haven't read this yet, but in John chapter 11, Jesus' words give life to someone. Lazarus, right? So the Father's a life giver. This is the introduction, you could say, in John chapter 5 of Jesus saying, hey, look at what God the Father does. That's what I do. Because I'm one with the Father and he loves me. He's given me these works to do. So you know God is life giver. I'm a life giver. And also, you know God is judge. I'm judge. This is Jesus showing his oneness with the Father. Again, verse 21, for as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, so also the Son gives life to whom he will. For the Father judges no one, but has given all judgment to the Son, that all may honor the Son, just as they honor the Father. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. So this is Jesus literally saying this after John's telling us that the Jews are persecuting Jesus and want to kill him. Whoever does not honor the Son does not honor the Father. I mean, I don't think this happened like this, but I imagine Jesus saying, whoever does not honor the Son, you all, does not honor the Father. Okay, we've seen these Jewish leaders not honor the Son, persecute him, want to kill him because of what he did at that pool. And now Jesus makes this statement, whoever doesn't honor me doesn't honor the Father. So we're introduced early in chapter 5, in the previous point, to the hostility, but Jesus doesn't kind of say, well, hold on, guys. Let me just kind of walk you through this. No, he makes these claims. You don't honor me, you don't honor the Father. And Jesus doesn't back down from this. He doesn't make it the contention any softer. He just keeps saying the truth, and you can see them just kind of getting more and more angry. Verse 24, truly, truly, I say to you, whoever hears my word and believes him, there's our theme again, right? Whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. Purpose of the book. He does not come into judgment, but is passed from death to life. I mean, let's just notice this. I write these things to you so you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing may have life in his name. So believe, Son, eternal life, all here in a couple verses. Verse 25, truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming and is now here when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, voice of not God, voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. Okay, so you got the hear theme happen again. Where's here? Who hears my word? We hear and we live. Now, there's certainly double meaning here, right? Because Jesus, again, is going to tell Lazarus, who's dead, Lazarus come out, and Lazarus is going to hear and live. But all through the Gospel of John, people are hearing Jesus' words, and what's the consequence for them? They're living when they respond, when they believe. Hear, live. Hear, live. Verse 26. For as the Father has life in himself, so he's granted the Son also to have life in himself. Father, life giver. Son, life giver. And he's given him authority to execute judgment. He's not just one who gives life, he also judges. Again, these two themes keep coming up. Gives life, judges. Gives life, judges. Verse 27, he's given him authority to execute judgment because he's the Son of Man. He's the one in charge. He's the one that Daniel 7 talks about, the one in charge of everything. Don't marvel at this. Well, okay. Don't marvel at this. An hour is coming when all who are in tombs will hear his voice and come out. Those who have done good to the resurrection of life, those who have done evil, the resurrection of judgment. Here's where you can read a couple of cross-references. Can someone read John 6:40 and then 6:54? 6:40 and 54. Can someone read that? Anybody? Great. Okay. Al, thank you. Can someone read 11:43 to 44? Chapter 11, 40. Sam, thank you. Okay. So 6:40 and 54. Good. So we're hearing Jesus saying, here's the Father's design, here's the Father's plan, that me as the life giver announces a message, people hear and believe, and therefore I give them eternal life. They're raised from death to life. They live forever. Okay, so Jesus teaches that throughout the book of John, and he introduces it here as he connects himself to the work of the Father. The Father has life, I have life. When you believe in the message I give, you have eternal life. That's the Father's will, that is my will, that's what happens here. Sam, 11:43 to 44. Great. So Jesus announces something, and someone dead responds. The dead respond to the words of Jesus. Physically, life happens. Jesus gives the words of eternal life or spiritual life, and the dead respond. Life happens. Why? Because that's what God has the power to do, and he gives that for his Son to do. Verse 30, I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. All through these verses, I'm just going to circle the whole section. All through this section, you hear Jesus lining himself up under the Father and telling his audience that. The Father gives life, I give life. The Father judges, I judge. I can't do anything on my own. The Father sent me, I do what he does. Jesus is showing his oneness with the Father. By highlighting two realities: life giver of the Father and Son, judging of the Father and Son. Point number 3. Verse 31 to 47. He came to his own. Now we learn the response to all of this teaching from Jesus. Jesus' equality with God, affirmed or rejected. So point number 3 in this lesson is the response now. Okay? 31. If I alone bear witness about myself, my testimony is not true. What's Jesus saying there? You didn't just get to come and make a claim to truth. Truth claims had to be verified by 2 or 3 witnesses. So this is Jesus saying, hey, I'm not just showing up as the guy from Nazareth and now Galilee. I'm not just showing up here in Jerusalem saying, this is what's true, believe me. I've got witnesses. That's what Jesus is doing. If I alone bear witness about myself, my testimony is not true. There's another who bears witness about me, and I know that the testimony that he bears about me is true. Now, Jesus is going to talk about a specific witness, but actually, in this account, through the end of verse 47, he's going to give a number of witnesses to his truthfulness. Okay, so we're just going to number them, and here we're going to put number 1 by John. Jesus is saying, I call my first witness to the stand, John the Baptist. You sent to John, and he's borne witness to the truth. Not that the testimony that I receive is from man. So he's a created being, he's a man. It's not that that's everything, but it is something. You went and asked him yourself. 34, not that the testimony I receive is from man, but I say these things so that you may be saved. He was a burning and shining lamp, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. You kind of succumbed to his popularity. But the testimony that I have is greater than that of John. So he starts with, not the least credible, because John was very credible. It was prophesied that he would be credible. But he starts with the man that they knew, that they know, that they maybe even saw and heard. He just starts with him. Hey, you went to John, and he was pointing to me. That's my first witness. John, who you even for a little while were willing to follow and listen to, he was pointing to me. I start with him as my witness. Verse 36, but the testimony that I have is greater than that of John. For the works I call to the stand as my second witness, the works that I've been doing. For the works that the Father has given me, notice it's the works the Father's given him. He's connecting himself to the Father again. The works the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works that I'm doing, water to wine, you've heard about that boy that I raised from the dead, those types of things. The very works that I'm doing bear witness about me that the Father has sent me. So you're hearing Jesus do a couple of things. He's calling witnesses to show that he's just not on an island saying these things. Look at what John the Baptist was pointing to, me. Look at the power that I've been demonstrating. There's something behind that. And he's also showing, again, his oneness with the Father, which would have frustrated them to no end. Because they are the ones that knew God. He seems to be talking like he knows God even better than we do. The works that the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works I'm doing, bear witness about me. The Father has sent me. Verse 37. Speaking of the Father, called to the stand, my next witness, the Father. Verse 37. And the Father who sent me has himself borne witness about me. His voice you've never heard, his form you've never seen, and you do not have his word abiding in you, for you do not believe in the one whom he sent. So again, for him to tell them, you don't know the Father, what an insult. I mean, imagine if someone just kind of came into this room and stood up on the middle of the stage and said, hey, you all, you don't know God. Hold on a second. You don't know who we are. We're Canyon Bible Church of Prescott. We know God. I mean, that would be an audacious statement to make to us. Well, what's Jesus saying to them? He's making an audacious statement. You don't know God. You don't know my Father. Why? Let's read it again. Second part of 36. For the works the Father has given me to accomplish, the very works I am doing, bear witness about me that the Father sent me. And the Father who sent me has himself borne witness about me. Remember his voice coming down at the baptism, this is my beloved Son. Okay? It's borne witness about me. His voice you've never heard, his form you've never seen, and you do not have his word abiding in you, for you do not believe the one whom he sent. You don't know God because you don't know me rightly. If you know me rightly, you know God rightly. That's what he's saying. Verse 39, another witness. You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life, and it is they that bear witness about me. Yet you refuse to come to me so that you may have life. I do not receive glory from people, but I know that you do not have the love of God within you. So you prize the scriptures, but the scriptures point to me. And the idea that you don't come to me means that you don't get the scriptures. I mean, you don't know John the Baptist rightly, you don't know God the Father rightly, and you don't know the scriptures rightly. I wonder why they wanted to kill him. I mean, this is Jesus just stating it plain as day. Here's what we're dealing with, everyone. John the Baptist, the works, the Father, the scriptures. And then in verse 43, we get this, I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. Again, let's just kind of point out the negative responses here, because that's kind of what this is all about. Jesus' equality with God is being rejected here. You don't receive me. If another comes in his own name, you'll receive him. There were false messiahs that came to Israel a number of times. And Jesus is saying, if someone else comes in his own name, comes with some authority on his own, you guys receive people like that. You listen to people like that. But I'm coming and you don't listen to me. Why do you receive people like that? If another comes in his own name, you'll receive him. Verse 44, how can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that comes from only God? Here's what he's saying. When false messiahs come, they try to amass a following. And so they would commend their listeners, they would praise their listeners, and their listeners would say, oh, you are our leader, you are the one that we follow, because they wanted praise from him, glory from him, appreciation. They wanted that from all these false messiahs. We're with him. Look, he sat me at his table at this meal. You guys fall for that stuff because you want the glory that comes from man. But God is willing to give you a praise, a commendation if you would listen to me, but you don't listen to me, so you don't care about glory from God the Father. You don't care about being honored by God the Father by responding to his Son. You'll believe people that come in their own name, but you won't believe in me. And John the Baptist pointed to me. I've done miracles that point to my power. The Father has sent me. Moses, the scriptures talk about me, and you don't believe because you're more concerned about your standing in this life in front of men than you are being affirmed and praised, if you will, by God himself. God is willing to give you commendation for responding to his Son, but that's not as important to you as being popular here in Jerusalem from all of your false saviors. That's what he's talking about. Verse 45. Do not think that I will accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you. So I don't even need to tell God the Father that you're all in the wrong. Moses will beat me to it. Moses, on whom you've set your hope. For if you believe Moses, you'd believe me, because he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So really, he says, I don't even need to tell God the Father, these people aren't listening to me. Moses will tell you, God, they're not listening to my writings. Because my writings are pointing to your son. And they don't believe in your son, therefore they really don't hold to my writings. So Jesus is taking all of these witnesses that they would claim to follow. Yeah, John the Baptist, good guy. How come you don't listen to him then? Whoa. Yeah, God is the Father of Israel. Then how come you don't listen to him when he sends his son? Moses, he's our man. If he can't, I don't know what they say. Moses, the Torah, we have his law. We hold on to Moses. Then how come you don't listen to him? I'm the prophet. Even the woman at the well got that. I'm the prophet. I'm the Savior. I'm the one Moses was writing about. So Jesus came to his own. Point number 3, Jesus is equality with God, has been stated in the earlier points, and now it's either affirmed or rejected. And here in this passage, we learn about it being rejected. So, full chapter 5. Okay? Some themes I want you to get that I want to make sure that you see. Oops. Some things to get are Jesus' equality with God. All throughout the chapter, Jesus is pointing to his Father and saying that he comes in the name of his Father. He comes doing the works of his Father. He comes in the name, he's one with the Father. So notice all that. And yes, chapter 5:18, his opponents knew that that's what he was claiming. Okay, that's why they wanted to kill him all the more. So notice that theme. Notice how witnesses point to the testimony of Jesus. God intended it to be that way. Whether it was God saying, "This is my beloved Son," at his baptism, whether it was the Scriptures pointing to Jesus as a witness, whether it was God sending John the Baptist to point to Jesus. God has designed for things and people to point to Jesus as the Messiah, as the Son of God. Okay? Now to be clear, I don't know that there's a lot of application that just jumps out of the page at us in chapter 5. I mean, I suppose if there's someone who's not in Christ, believe. This is the one God the Father, the creator of the world, sent. Believe him. But can you think of maybe some things that jump out to you? Maybe some things that you'd want to have people walk away with? A lot of times in the gospel, the application is believe and keep believing. But I don't know, does something else jump out at you? Daniel? Sorry, Daniel and then Dave?
I thought it was interesting that when he went to his hometown, that the one who did receive him was actually an official, that he was going through a difficult time.
Okay.
So just something that jumped out to me. I can see it's perfect.
Yeah, good.
He was willing to listen, go to Christ, even believing in Christ.
Yeah.
He was also in crisis.
Yeah, Daniel points out the idea that not just with the official up here, but people who come to Christ are often people in crisis. The official's son was dying and he went to Jesus and believed. That's a good word. The Pharisees, the Jews, want glory from man. But people who don't have commendation from men or are struggling in difficult situations, they're in a great place to hear the message of Jesus as Messiah, Jesus as Savior. That's a good word. So take notice of the people around you. I mean, some of you pray these prayers for your adult children who are not in Christ. You pray prayers like, Lord, if it takes them experiencing what the prodigal son experienced at his lowest point, bring them there. I mean, you love your children, but you pray that they would come to the end of themselves and look to Christ. So, yeah, there is an idea, even in the Gospel of John, that those who are suffering and in need respond to Jesus, the man who's paralyzed, woman at the well, official with the dying son. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a good thing to take note of. Note people with little or no hope. Dave.
So just the way we read our Bibles and the unity and scope going all the way back. And John has already done this. So chapter 1, Philip found Nathanael, said to him, "We have found him of whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth," which indicates that these guys were really exposed to, things in the synagogue and the Torah scrolls and stuff. But I mean, right there, he's got that. That's what Jesus talked, the road to Emmaus.
Yeah.
The Old Testament all points to me. So the scope of the Bible, how we read our Old Testaments, is again emphasized.
Great. Dave brings out the idea of noticing, the importance of noticing that the scriptures point to Jesus. Now, you're all leaders. Many of you have been Christians for a long time. Oh, that's obvious. Why even waste time on that? Because a lot of people don't read their Old Testaments that way. They read of Daniel and David and they go, oh, okay, I've got to be like David here. They're pointing to someone greater than David and greater than you. You have need of the greater David. You have need of the one who's faithful to his people. So yeah, the scriptures are pointing to Jesus. The Gospels show him in the purposes of the author, show him for who he is. The epistles point back to him. Jesus is the theme of Scripture. Yeah, good. Any other thoughts? Oh, number. Okay, great. All right, start over here, Diane.
So could another application from I'm not receiving glory from people apply to us too? Like, most of we want praise from people for doing something good instead of receiving
Yeah.
from God.
Yeah, Diane asked the idea that him criticizing the Jews, you want glory from man, and you don't care as much about the glory from God. You're bringing out, sometimes we get there too. We care more about what man thinks than what God thinks. And commendation, that word commendation or praise is a verb the New Testament uses of God, that God gives to us. Commendation, encouragement, yes, that's faithful, yes, that's right. And sometimes we care more about what people think than receiving the praise from God. Yeah, that's a good word. Good. Glory, or I'll just say commendation from God more than man. And, that's where if I was leading a small group, I'd ask the question, anybody willing to share of a time in your past when you cared more about what man thought than what God thought? And, yeah, I'll tell you, just a few months ago, and those things are helpful for maybe people in the groups to hear. Oh, yeah, okay, I can see how I could do that too. So, good. There's another hand, Jason.
Yeah, just even highlighting what Dave was saying, there's the second connection kind of pointing out the same thing, because when you read John 5:20, the Father loves the Son, shows him all that he himself is doing, and greater works than these will he show him, so that he may marvel. The idea is that, and Jesus highlights that the works that he does are one of the things that testify to who he is. Well, that's exactly what he said to Nathanael in chapter 1. Nathanael got excited because Jesus did a miracle and kind of read his mind a little bit.
Yeah.
Told him about what I saw you at the fig tree. Nathanael's like, okay, I'm going to follow you. And Jesus is like, don't marvel at that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see greater things than this. Jesus said in 5:28, do not marvel at this. For an hour is coming when all who are in the tomb hear his voice and come out. Jesus kind of brackets that same idea that he was highlighting with Nathanael.
Yeah.
All of these things are meant to testify to who he is. When we see these things, we should get excited about Jesus.
Great.
Not get excited about the stuff.
Great. Marvel at Jesus' work. So Jason's highlighting Nathanael's response and then what Jesus is saying here. Just trace the word marvel through, chapter 1 of John and chapter 5 of John. Marvel at Jesus and specifically his work to raise the dead and to judge. Be in awe of those aspects of Jesus' life. Because those are the greater works talked about. Yeah, that's good. There's one more hand, Adam, and Sam. Okay, Anna, okay.
If you get questions about Moses, like I believe Moses said what he wrote about me, what specific, because Jesus doesn't refer to any specific passage here,
Yeah,
is there a specific passage or
yeah,
a portion of the Old Testament that we can go to?
good. Yeah, I don't believe Jesus has one passage when he states this in John 5. I think he's highlighting that Moses in general, so Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, the Torah that they prized. By the way, the Samaritans also prized the Torah. Nothing else of the Old Testament. They Torah only, whereas these Jews were Torah plus the prophets and writings. But Jesus is saying all that Moses wrote about was pointing to me in general. I don't think he's talking specifically at this point in 5 about any one thing. Now, I think we could already make connections in the Gospel of John. Prophet, Deuteronomy 18. Okay, I'm blanking right now to others, but I think he's in general saying the Torah is about me. So yeah, good question. Alan, was that you had a hand? Yeah.
I see, as you read through here, says bear witness to the truth. Bear witness about.
Yep.
That's what we're called.
Yep.
Witnesses. You see in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, where it says, "You will be my witnesses
Yep.
in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and to the end of the earth."
Yeah, that's great.
So it's personal.
Good.
I see it as a personal call.
Yeah, where have we seen in John so far where people are pointing to Jesus? Just call them out. John the Baptist, what else? Disciples, come and see. Who else? Who? Lame man at the pool. Good. Who else? Samaritan woman. Yeah, this is a theme now, right? And like Alan says in Acts, you'll be witnesses about me to the ends of the earth. That's what we do. So we're in the line of those people. Yeah, that's a great thing to remember. Okay, let's pause there. Let's break there. 5 minutes or so, and we'll come do the last part. We got 45 minutes to do all of chapter 6. Okay, so we can do it.